We are 4 weeks out from Easter, so I wanted to remind people, this just invite people to check us out. And of course, now we've got the Wednesday night alternative, where we do meditation, conversation, and music on Wednesday evenings, starting at 6:30. So, like I said, just if that is, like it says, 80% of people who find a spiritual center or a church usually find it because somebody is invited. Secondly, I wanted to thank our prayer chaplains. I know, Valerie and Bronwyn, who of course are Reiki spiritual healers, are also chaplains, as is Joanne Wells, who isn't here this morning. If you ever want one-on-one prayer, either before or after the service, just seek one of them out, and they'd be glad to pray with you. And then, of course, we do the mini Reiki treatments here, both before and after the service, about 15 minutes. So. Thank you. Like I said, I appreciate you guys being available. So, good morning. Have you ever gotten home and come through the door and there is that smell that was not there in the morning? It's a very distinctive smell. It's a smell that if you've ever smelled it, it will never quite be cleared from your nostrils. It's when a potato has gone bad. And it's weird how quickly it happens. Of course, first signs of it is where it starts to, kick out new roots, but then just kind of liquefies and just, yeah. And I thought it's kind of a good metaphor for those unpleasant experiences that we hold on to and we kind of store in our emotional closet. Sooner or later it's going to surface with a vengeance, and life can begin to stink. This is the fifth week of a 7-week series on the spiritual principles of prosperity. So this week we'll be talking obviously about letting go of the past. And the whole idea is that I want each of us as individuals to thrive, to live our lives to the full potential. It's based on the class Keys to the Kingdom, which was written by Reverend David Owen Ritz. We usually offer this class about once a year, but I know I decided last year I did want to do it as a Sunday series. Frankly, when I did this as a Sunday series when I was serving the church in Indianapolis back in 2013, we finished up the 7 weeks, and one of the things that I remember is that there was a flu epidemic because it was January and February 2013. And there was a little bit of a downturn in the economy up there in Indianapolis. And then suddenly, the week after we ended the 7-week series, we got notification that someone had left the church $300,000 in their will. So when you do come together as a group of people, even this, 2 or 3 gathered in my name, it's amazing the synergy that we can build. So for you as individual, I just want you to be able to open your mind to the concept of prosperity. All needs met, all obligations fulfilled, and all desires demonstrated. Now, if you've missed any of the lessons, they're available, one on our website, at the bottom of our website. We've got them on our Facebook page. We recorded there. And then we've got the compact discs. If you fill out a request form over there in the book and gift store, we'll make sure we've got them for you next week. And then, of course, the student kit is over there, the book and the audio CDs. So I think we still got a few of those left. So if you want to pick those up, that'll allow you to at least catch up, and also to, like I said, have this. The 2 most practical ways to express being a spiritual being, have a human experience, is one, healing, and then the second, of course, is prosperity, having the things that we need in our life. So just a quick recap. First week we talked about just committing to the concept of tithing of your time, talent, and treasure. That whatever we give unconditionally is going to come back to us multiplied at least 10 times. Second, we talked about a broader vision for your life, being willing to look at what do you do really well, what are your gifts, your passions, your talents, and how often are you expressing them? Because making that shift, expressing that sort of thing to the world, you find that other people are expressing it back to you as well. So what is your potential? What do you believe is your highest good? And do you need to kind of stretch that concept a little bit? And then third week we did build a new awareness, examining our general assumptions about life. And I listed 7 different spiritual truths to just kind of have each of you look at, do I believe this or not? Or is there something standing in the way of me believing the spiritual truth? Then last week was, someone said, the most fun week we've had so far, and that was making room for the new, the law of the circulation. So being willing to declutter your home. And I said, don't feel like you need to declutter the whole home this week, but maybe tackling that one closet or that one junk drawer to be able to let that clogged up energy just be released from your life and from your home. Also, let's open up your finances. Look at, okay, how much money do I have at the moment? What are my debts? Just being more aware of what's there right now. And then also refining your goals, taking that vision and coming up with declarative sentences of what it is you want to achieve and setting a deadline for it. So let's get on to the 5th week, or the 5th key to the kingdom, and that's letting go of the past. Now, the past is not in the past if you are running it through your mind right now. And when we're running it through our mind right now, we're not in the moment. Duncan, I'm going to have you put up the first slide here. So here are the 4 characteristics of being stuck in the past. And that is regret, condemnation, guilt, and resentment. And it's interesting how when we don't deal with these things, they keep surfacing. Why is this happening to me again? It's like, well, our minds are trying to show us. It's like, well, this is a belief that you have that's kind of standing in the way of your good. Are you willing to reassess it and say, okay, I'm willing to let it go? It means you've not completely processed it and released that unpleasantness. Like, metaphor I like to use is, no matter how well I mop the kitchen floor, I'm going to have to mop it again eventually. Another one, of course, is mowing the lawn. No matter how well you mow the lawn, it's going to need to be mowed again. Now, resentment of energy, is trying to change the past, and that's not a very healthy thing to do. In the Keys to the Kingdom book, David Owen Ritz talks about, imagine, okay, you've stopped at a stoplight on a very pleasant day, all your windows of your car is open, and somebody comes up and just dumps all this stinky garbage in your back seat and runs away. Now, you can sit there saying, oh man, that garbage stinks. Or you can get rid of the garbage. You can roll up the windows and drive around talking about how horrible it was that person dumped the garbage in the back seat of your car. Or you can get the garbage out of the back seat of the car. The problem with taking these 4, the resentment, guilt, condemnation, and regret, is it's kind of like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't work out very well, and it affects us. So let's talk about the F word, forgiveness. Letting go of wanting to change your past rather than taking the emotional charge out of the past. You see, when we take these 4, what happens is we restrict the vital energies that are always flowing in and through us in the universe. Your soul desires that you replenish your vital energies, to step into the flow, as they say in unity. So healing emotional pain leads to healing bodily illnesses and lack of any kind. Your body knows how to heal a wound, and so does your mind, your emotions, whatever. So last week we cleaned our closets. Now it's time maybe to look at the emotional closet. Okay, thanks, Duncan. So you may be thinking, oh God, another lesson on forgiveness. Yeah, another lesson on forgiveness. It's important, and it's one of the more challenging things we have to do as a spiritual being in this human experience. So it might be something as little as someone cut you off in traffic, and it might be something severe as someone has cut you off from their life. So let me clarify what forgiveness is. There's an old saying, forgive and forget. What I want you to do is to forget, forgive and forget. Dr. Wayne Dyer, gives the example of, like, okay, say I'm hiking in a forest and I get bitten by a poisonous snake. He says, well, it's very easy for me to forgive the snake. The snake is just being a snake. It's just doing what a snake does, and I invaded its territory. So yeah, it bit me. He goes, but the first thing we need to do after that is to remove the poison from the body. He says, but do I forget that it happened? He goes, no. I mean, that was a very valuable lesson. Now I know what to look for. The distinctive markings of the snake. Was it a rattlesnake that made a sound as I was walking up on it? These are all the things so that the next time I'm walking through the forest, I don't make that same mistake again. So it's not necessary to forgive, but can you recall a situation without reliving it? Can you release the emotional charge from it? That's the point where I recognize, yeah, I've forgiven. Because yeah, that happened to me. It was unpleasant, but I learned a very valuable spiritual lesson from that. So, Duncan, go ahead and put up the next slide. So, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is not denying that anything happened. Have a full awareness that yes, it did happen. And acknowledge how you feel about it. Forgiveness is not excusing. You don't want to condone the behavior. It's inappropriate, it's hurtful, but you're willing to let it go. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Forgiveness is unconditional. We give it freely. We have no expectation of a response. Forgiveness is different from reconciliation, which may not be possible. In fact, Wayne Dyer talks about what a horrible child that he had with his father. And he recognized he needed to forgive his father, but dad was dead. So he said, but what finally gave me closure is to do the classic graveside conversation with his father. Just sitting there, having a good cry, just saying, how he felt. He says, but on the other hand, I have to recognize that childhood gave me a frame of reference to move into my adulthood and be the influential person that Wayne was before he just passed away a few years ago. So sometimes we just need to be willing to recognize that sometimes there's not reconciliation, but that can be okay. Forgiveness is something we do for ourselves, and something, like I said earlier, we have to do regularly. And then forgiveness is a heroic act of love, self-love. Now, there is a belief sometimes in some corners that you have to recall every negative thing or any unpleasant thing that happened to you to release it. And like I say, sometimes it does surface in our mind. But you don't have to recall every individual situation that you've had. Like I said, the mind is an amazing way of healing itself. And it is very much like on a computer having an antivirus software. Especially if it's an antivirus for COVID-19. That would be really good antivirus software. But, so yeah, just know that the guidance will bring up to you what it is you need to do, but sometimes just starting the process is like pulling the thread on a sweater. It just suddenly all of it unravels because you get it at a deeper level. Okay, Duncan, let's go ahead and show the next slide. So take a look at the areas in your life where there may be constriction of energy. How were you raised? Who parented you? Was it your blood parents? Did somebody else parent you? What are your childhood experiences? I know as I look back, a lot of my childhood experiences were very unpleasant or scary at the times, but from an adult perspective, I can kind of go back in my mind and coach that memory, that inner child, that okay, we got a much greater understanding of what happened back then. What about your family? Your brothers, your sisters, your children? What about a spouse or a partner or an ex, whatever it is? And then what about our own past behaviors, our own past choices? Is there something that perhaps, that I've done that I feel badly about? And I know for me too, I know some of you know, Carla and I were second husband, second wife. I went through 9 years with my first wife, and it got to the point where we had to let each other go. But for a lot of years, I just kind of carried the guilt that it was my fault, and if I had just done this or I just done that, if I shoulda, woulda, coulda. Don't should on me, and I won't should on you. And then your job or your life circumstances. As we recently, I know back in Indianapolis, we had one woman who was a baby boomer about my age, and she was just very frustrated with her job or circumstances. And she went through several different jobs over the first few years I was there. And what I recognized was she just had a really lousy attitude at work. She'd get excited about a new job, but then she would just list everything that was wrong with it. And after 6 months, it was kind of like, she just hated it. So what's wrong here? Especially when you've done it in several different places or several different environments. There is a human proclivity to resent someone or something. And it's interesting how when we hear that something unpleasant has happened to them, we kind of take a nice quiet joy in that. And that shouldn't be the way it is. And of course, this year, what do you need to forgive in the political arena? So who needs forgiveness in your life? And recognize that by calling forth your power of love, that divine substance flows to love. So we combine our love and our renunciation faculties, and we're willing to let it go. Alan Cohen, in his book, The Deep Breath of Life, talked about an attorney named Michael Rimbold. He was a divorce attorney, and he was handling a really rough case, and it was his day for court, and so he stopped at a place that he would usually stop at to just meditate. He was just feeling the love, and like we've just been talking about, it's like, okay, just let it go. Stop seeing these two people as being just diametrically opposed to each other, and trust in the harmony of the world. And it felt good. And blessing the judge. And then he had a little bit more time, so well, I'm just going to bless everyone who's got a court date today, and just see them too, just releasing that energy of conflict, of disagreement. And he felt really good, and ended up the meditation, got to the courthouse. There was nobody in the courtroom, so I went to the judge's chambers and said, what's going on? He goes, oh, it was like, I called your office. The couple decided to settle out of court. And he said, wow. And he starts thinking, wow, consider the meditation. He goes, another weird thing is that the judge said, oh, I have 32 cases on the docket today, and all of them have settled out of court. So if you don't think you have the power, you do. And I personally had that experience. As some of you know, I was a journalist, and I was there was an all-news radio station, there still is, but there were two back then in Chicago, and I was working the night shift, where I'd be working from 5 p.m. until 1 o'clock, and I would put out a prayer, a meditation of peace for the whole city of Chicago. And at one point, I know I had a conversation with my boss and a couple of the other editors, because the one editor comes on in the morning, was kind of like, are we really paying attention to what's going on in the city? And what we started to discovering is that it seemed like most of the conflict in the city or shootings that was happening after 1 a.m. after I'd leave the job. And it was, and it's like, it humbled me. It's like, I can't really believe that I'm that powerful. But perhaps if me and a few other people are praying that sort of a thing, it can happen. So as we look at our current crisis, this COVID-19 thing, are we coming from love or are we coming from fear? Do we see everybody embracing the divine idea of perfect health? Can we allow for the possibility that in a few months we can look back and start to think maybe we overreacted to the whole thing? But let's just see that anybody who does encounter this or takes on this virus, that yes, they can heal, and they can heal faster than anybody would have imagined. So, how do we forgive? Well, in the Gospel of Matthew, Peter says to Jesus, what if someone just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and I have to forgive them again and again? I mean, shouldn't I quit after 7 times? And Jesus says, no. In fact, you should forgive him 70 times 7. The number 7 means completion in the physical world. So what it means is if you're still got an emotional charge about it, you haven't really forgiven. So just keep doing it until you need to be done. And that's where the 0 comes in, as long as it takes to get done. We've been given, like I said, the spiritual gift of love and renunciation. It's like, okay, I let it go, but then be open to, love bringing a more pleasant experience into your life. I forgive and release now and every day hereafter. Okay, Duncan, show the last slide. And like I say, all this stuff is on your handout. The 4 stages of forgiveness. So 1 is discovery. It's kind of like, okay, we see we got something. here that we need to let go of. So 2 is the decision. Are we willing to heal? Are we willing to heal this? Like Jesus comes into the guy sitting or laying on the mat near the pool of Bethesda. It's like, I want to get healed. And and Jesus said, well, do you truly want to be healed? And once the guy, and the guy starts coming up with excuses, and then Jesus said, well, get up and walk. That's what he did. So number 3 is changing your mind, coming to a different perspective. Recognize whoever did something unpleasant to you, they're just doing the best that they thought they were doing at the time. They're acting out their hurt. And like I said, everything that has happened in a divine order. And then number 4 is moving on, being able to release. And like I said, can you recall the event without reliving it? Yes, that was a wonderful experience. And when we do, when we do finally let go and recognize, okay, that we've allowed for a void in our life, can we just kind of be open and receptive to the divine ideas that are right and perfect for us to express? Allow that void to be filled with something new. We're going to close with a 2.5 middio. Middio? What's a middio? One of the most powerful stories I've seen on forgiveness. It's from actually Jeff Glor of CBS Evening News.
Jeff Glor tells us that out of the horror of that school shooting has come a lesson in forgiveness.
It's been 7 years since Terry Roberts' life changed forever. In October 2006, her 32-year-old son Charlie walked into an Amish school in Lancaster County and shot 10 young girls before killing himself.
I heard the sirens and saw helicopters. Then the phone was ringing and it was my husband. And he said, I need you to come to Charlie's house right away. And I got out of the car and I looked at my husband, and these sunken eyes just saying, it was Charlie. It could not be. And yet it truly was. It was true. It was our son.
Robert's initial reaction was that she had to move away. But the Amish came to her house the night of the shooting to say they wanted her to stay. Some of the victims' families attended her son's funeral.
There are not words to describe how that made us feel that day. And then for the mother and father that had lost not just one, but 2 daughters at the hand of our son, to come up and be the first ones to greet us. Wow. Is there anything in this life we shouldn't forgive?
Terry Roberts now shares this message with those who've experienced trauma. And every Thursday, she cares for the most seriously wounded survivor of the shooting, now 13. It's against Amish beliefs to appear on camera, so Donald Craighill often speaks on their behalf.
You have this mother who raised a son that did this horrific damage to this young woman. And the mother has the courage and the spiritual fortitude to come back and to care for this young woman. And the parents of the young woman welcome her into their home. It's a powerful, powerful story.
Those families in Newtown who may still have understandably conflicted feelings now, still less than a year later, what do you say to them?
Ask God to provide new things in your lives, new things to focus on, and that doesn't take the place of what is lost. But it can give us a hope and a future.
A future made possible for Terry Roberts because of forgiveness. Jeff Glor, CBS News, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
And from the Bible, Gospel of Matthew, 18th chapter, starting with the 21st verse. Peter came up and said to him, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I still forgive him? As many as 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. May you always be open to God's guidance and grace. Let's prepare for meditation.